Welcome back to SF Live, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We really appreciate your time. And today we have a special company introduction for you. It's Kingsrose Mining, and we're joined by Fabian Baker. He's the managing director of the ASX listed company, and the company has $27 million of cash in the bank account with a market cap of just barely below $40 million. I think it's going to be a super interesting discussion with Fabian, so stay tuned what he has to say. On top of it, they're also selling another project, adding more cash to the registry. Let's find out if it's a company worthwhile investing in, and let's see what Fabian has to say. But before I switch over to my guest, follow us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, hit that like and subscribe button. We are on Twitter at Soar Financial. I am the at JR Mining guy on Twitter as well, so follow us. And of course, leave a comment and leave a like. We do want to hear from you. And if you smash that like button, more like-minded investors will see the interview and can follow you along and maybe share some of the commentary as well. Thank you so much. Now, let me switch over to my guest. And Fabian, welcome to the program. It's good to see you.
Hi, Kai. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, likewise. We caught up just a little bit before hitting record here, and we had some brush-ins, I call them, because we've never really had a conversation sitting down. When you were at Tethian, I think we shook hands in the hallways of PDAC maybe once or twice, but that was it. You had a really successful past, and now you're with Kingsrose Mining. When did you join?
Yeah, I joined just after leaving Tethian, basically. So Tethian is a company that I built with a team that had assets in Serbia and was acquired by Adriatic Metals. And the chairman of Kingsrose at one point was a backer of Tethian, and so he saw how we operated there, and essentially having just transacted with Adriatic. Was at the same time that Kingsrose really needed a new focus, and so that's when he asked me to step in and basically lead this turnaround of Kingsrose.
Fantastic. Yeah, Fabian, it's your first time on SF Live. I warned you we're going to keep this fairly high level to get an introduction of the company to sort of understand what you guys are up to. Why don't you start us off with a quick 30, 60-second overview of Kingsrose, and then we'll catch up a bit on the history and all the other good stuff.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So Kingsrose is ASX listed. As you mentioned, we currently sit on 27 million Aussie dollars in cash and a market cap of around 40 million. That cash is the proceeds of the Walingo gold mine in Indonesia. And that's the project that Kingsrose was built around. It was listed to put that into production, and it operated it over 10 years. But that came to the end of its mine life late 2020. And at that point, unfortunately, the mining had been the focus and exploration had taken a back seat. So ultimately, when the mine came to an end, there was no real pipeline of exploration assets or what to do next. So when I was asked to join, in fact, the company was trading at a market cap below cash backing. So great opportunity as far as I was concerned. So we added to the board with a much more of an exploration focus, and we set about changing this strategy to go out and spend that money discovering really good quality assets. We recommissioned an exploration team at our Walingo mine with a very objective view. Is there a high quality million ounces here or not to justify being in a more challenging jurisdiction? In the end, we decided, despite having discovered some new zones, that we would sell the project. And in parallel, we'd been running a program essentially looking for M&A opportunities. And we transacted on some properties in Scandinavia. And the flagship one of those is a very high grade platinum group elements project called Penikat in Finland. And we've got a wealth of historical information that I'll go through with you. And it's looking like it could be the highest grade PGE exploration asset globally. So we're really excited about that. And we're continuing to hunt for new assets.
Fantastic. Yeah, great overview and lots to dive a little deeper on, of course, there as well to follow up on. I like starting sort of with a cap structure as well. Not everybody has $27 million in cash. Why don't you tell us how you came about that and maybe tell us a bit more about your shareholders?
Sure. So this company, as I say, listed in 2007, so there's quite a history there. And as of today, there's, as is more typical on the ASX, quite a lot of shares outstanding, just shy of 750 million shares outstanding. We're currently trading at around 5.5 cents. So that puts us at about a 45 million Australian market cap. In terms of $27 million of cash, that equates to about 3.5 cents per share. So we're only trading currently at around 15 million above cash. In terms of key shareholders, our largest shareholder is our chairman. He, in fact, discovered the Waylinggo gold mine in Indonesia and has been a key backer of that project. So he's sitting with just under 10%. And then we have a few other high net worth, sophisticated investors with between 5 and 8%. But it's very much a retail dominated shareholder base, although that's starting to change, and we're seeing some exploration focused, mining focused institutions starting to take a position and an interest in Kingsrose and its new future.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, well, making quite a ways away. I think you've been mentioned in one of the Sprott reports as one of the upcoming stories to look at as well, based on cash position, but also based on your projects in Finland. As well, obviously. Let's stay a bit with the history of the past of the company. I want to talk a bit more Waylinggo, because I know you're running a divestment process, trying to sell the project. How is that coming along? And I think there's an exclusivity period that's about to end as well.
Yeah, that's right. So the mine produced a little over 200,000 ounces of gold. So it's not a huge mine, but it was very high grade. In fact, the early years of production in 2010 and 11, it was the lowest cost gold producer on the ASX entirely. So you could do that when you're mining 17 grams gold and about 500 grams silver. So it was a really sweet little mine and really nice cash flow. But it became a lot more challenged later on. And as I say, because the mine became less efficient, money was very much just focused on mining and not exploration and thinking about what next. So when I joined, mining had just ceased. We had around 35 million in cash at that point. And basically we set about continuing exploration around the area. There's a lot of targets and a lot of areas that were interesting. And we did make some discoveries of new mineralized zones within the area, quite near the past producing mine. And we put an updated resource estimate out. And we've got in the region of 300,000 ounces gold equivalent at about 6 grams, still in the ground there. So still, an interesting target. But from my point of view, I didn't have that history with the project, and I see that for a company to be successful in the capital markets as a junior exploration company, people really want to see that opportunity of something major, something of scale that can really drive value and potentially be bought out. So we weren't quite seeing that evidence there, and so we wanted to rationalize the portfolio, and we set about this divestment process. So we engaged with a lot of different parties. Ultimately selected one who had shown real commitment to the process, and we entered into an exclusivity arrangement with them. That was a 60-day exclusivity arrangement, and we are just announcing that will be extended slightly, just to allow us to basically complete some of the documentation. But as it stands, the parties are committed to the transaction, and things seem to be moving ahead well.
Yeah, fantastic. Like, what do you plan to achieve with the process? Like you said, it's close to 1 million ounces. What are you looking for to get out of it? Like, how much kind of value are you putting on? $10, $20 an ounce? Great Bear sold for $218 an ounce. Of course, you're not getting that in Indonesia, but what's realistic?
Well, actually, we have a resource that's more in the sort of 300,000 to 400,000 ounce range. So look, we haven't disclosed a purchase price yet, and that is just being finalized. So I need to be a little bit careful about what I say. But
yeah, I'm just poking the bear to see what comes out. I obviously knew you can't divulge the sale price, but
I think it is a resource, but an inferred resource. But it's sitting next to a mill and all the infrastructure needed to put a mine back into production. So there's value there. However, it's also in Indonesia, and there's a limited market that's interested in buying mines and operating in Indonesia. It's not been a jurisdiction where many international companies have been going into lately. So there's a slightly more limited pool of potential buyers. But as I say, there's a lot of advantages that the project holds. So on balance, we've had a good amount of interest, and I think we're happy with the way the transaction's going. And our focus really has been, we can't do everything. So to get cash upfront, which we can deploy on our current new assets and acquisition of new ones, but then also retain exposure through a royalty down the line. So it's that combination of near-term cash and then a royalty to retain that exposure.
Okay, fantastic. Fabian, I think we actually do have one more follow-up question before we wrap it up on Waylinggo, but why are you still spending money on the project when you're selling it? Like, and that's my sort of like just doing some basic due diligence. I just cross-reference your PowerPoint where some of the news flow, and you're putting out drill results and exploration results from the project. But my understanding is you're
Sure.
selling it, right? So in a
Yeah.
cash-tight market, is like why?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as I said, we did, before deciding to sell it, start this exploration program on the property, and we did discover a new vein, what we call the Mall vein, and it's only 500 meters away from one of the past producing pits. So we drilled a few holes there, and it kept returning encouraging results. And so, we thought it was beneficial while we were running this process, looking for a potential buyer, to have one rig ticking away, hitting new intersections, growing the opportunity, and that helped create some competitive tension, and that seems to have done its job. But then we did stop spending money, and actually the incoming buyer, not only did they pay us $100,000 deposit, which is non-refundable if they don't proceed with the transaction, they also committed to fund some further drilling on the project, which was in part for their own due diligence, but also, we saw it as beneficial as we see the potential in the project.
I was like, are you obviously seeing some return on investment on the drilling there as well? I'm
Exactly.
assuming. Fantastic.
It's a good testament to the team there and the value of exploration. We took a bit of a risk. We could have drew a line under Wailingo on conclusion of mining, but we decided to continue exploring. And I think it's that continued exploration and demonstrating that there's upside that was the key to us being able to find a willing buyer.
Fantastic. No, congratulations on. Looks like the sale is going ahead, and we'll probably get you back on once the sale is done, and we can talk about use of proceeds. So, but
Great.
let's move on. You've got some really interesting projects in Indonesia, Scandinavia, Norway, and Finland, obviously. But you're talking about M&A, so I'm struggling here a bit with my next question. More or less, is like, how much should we talk about Scandinavia when you're talking about M&A? Right? Are we
Sure.
wasting our time on Scandinavia, or is M&A going to take it away from Scandinavia, or should we all focus on Scandinavia, and the M&A will add something down the pipeline in 10 years' time?
Yeah, look, the transaction we did acquired two assets for us. One in Norway called Porsanger, and another in Finland called Penikat. And Penikat is the primary flagship asset in terms of that transaction. And Penikat is really outstanding. The more due diligence we did, the closer we looked at it, the more compelling the opportunity appeared.
Maybe can I stop you
that,
just for 1 second?
yeah,
Just curious, like before we dive deeper into it, like how'd you acquire the projects and who'd you acquire them from?
Sure. Well, we identified Scandinavia just as a region that we liked the opportunity from the point of view of geological potential. You've got great gold opportunities. You've got Europe's largest gold mine at Kittilä. You've got Rupert Resources with a more recent discovery, and then also some excellent base metals opportunities. So Anglo-American Sakatti deposit, one of the best high-grade nickel copper discoveries in recent times. So great geology, good jurisdiction, and a good accessibility of information to make inroads to a new jurisdiction. So it made sense for us to start looking. Plus, myself and most of the team are based in Europe. So we liked the area, and we basically did quite a systematic review, understanding the different belts, the different types of opportunities. And it was while we went through that we came across. And in fact, I was aware of a good friend of mine who had privately funded and started a small business, combing through the archives, the geological archives, looking for these platinum group element opportunities. And he, Andrew Dacey, went and acquired these two projects and did a fantastic job at finding them. But what was the next step from being a small private company with not particularly well funded to get listed and really drive these projects forwards, and working in that region and with some of the permitting requirements that I'll come on to, you need to approach this as a larger entity with a full suite of skills and a longer time frame essentially to take that through to success.
No, fantastic. No, I appreciate it. So you bought it outright, 100% owned. I think that's the Element 46 acquisition that I saw in your timeline. Is that what we're talking about?
That's right. Element 46 was the private company. We bought it 100%. The deal is staged. Despite us owning 100% already, we made an initial payment of cash and shares, so about $500,000 Australian dollars in cash and about 2% of our equity as a share-based payment. And then there's a further payment of a little bit more than that, which is on successfully getting our drill permits that we're working on at the moment. So 100% owned. And as I say, Penikat there is the flagship,
Okay, yeah.
but Porsanger in Norway looking quite interesting as well.
Oh, okay. No, we can go on Panic. I interrupted there as well. Like, I apologize for that. Just curious what the story was there,
Yeah,
because you said 100% owned, so I'm always curious. Like, how'd you acquire it, and are
yeah.
there any strings attached to the acquisition, right? So,
No,
um,
no strings, and this is quite a small industry. And Andrew Dacey, who founded it, I'd worked with in the past, and one of our directors, Tim Coughlin, had worked with him at Lydian. That's another company that we were involved in. And so, we know him as a great geologist and somebody who can go out and find good opportunities. And we were really pleased to be able to uncover this, something that really we think is so substantial at such a good valuation.
no, fantastic. Yeah, let's talk a bit more about targeting and exploration at Penikat as well. You said you still need to get drill permits. Why don't you run us through the process, and what are you doing on the ground right now?
Sure. So the style of deposit is what's called a layered intrusion, and it's the same style of deposit as you have in the Bushveld complex of South Africa and the Stillwater intrusion in the US. And these are the world's dominant PGE producers. These are typically high grade and very large deposits. So they essentially are a large magma chamber, and as it cools, you have these layers of minerals rich in platinum group elements, along with copper, nickel, gold. And these basically settle out and drape the floor of the intrusion. And because of that process of how they formed, they're very large and they're very consistent. So at Penikat, this process has happened 3 times. And so we have 3 stacked layers of mineralization. They're typically quite thin, in the region of 1.5 to 2.5 meters thick. And that's common for these types of deposits. But we also see some zones where it blows out into thicker widths, which I can come on to. But we have at surface cumulatively of these 3 layers, 25 kilometers of outcropping high-grade mineralization. And that's well understood because in the late 80s, early 90s, the Finnish state and then what became Outokumpu, the major mining and refining company in Finland, explored this project. So they drilled over 100 drill holes into the area that we now hold. And although these only average about 40 to 50 meters deep, they essentially show continuous mineralization over about 10 kilometers of that 25 kilometer strike. And then there's been further surface sampling, channel sampling, showing the rest of it. So we've got a really thorough data set that gives us a great indication of where this ore body is, where it's dipping, what the grades are, what the thicknesses are. And because of the style of mineralization that I mentioned, how they form quite consistently, we can really infer a lot from that.
Yeah, inferring a lot. So, like, I have your PowerPoint open here, and you mentioned exploration target. Right?
Yeah.
That's something you
So
don't see in the Northern Hemisphere a lot, is the exploration targets. I'm rather cautious with it personally. Why don't you explain it to us a bit and put some context around it? Because it's a big number you're mentioning there.
it's a really valid point. If I'm honest, normally roll my eyes when I see an exploration target being announced. And we felt that this was different for a couple of reasons. And the main one being, as I just explained, the amount of data that we have and the style of ore body lends itself to giving a good confidence in our predictions for what this could look like. In addition, so the permitting process that we're going through, it's quite typical in Finland, but a big portion of this area is designated as what's called a Natura 2000 site. So this covers about 16% of the EU. And what it means is that there's a heightened level of environmental protection that you need to be aware of. So before we can start drilling, we need to define our drill program and then assess, are there any important species, flora and fauna in the area, and understand if our impact is going to be too detrimental or not. Now, there's a number of precedents in country. Exploration has always been successful in getting its drill permits because it's recognized that's low impact. But that's a process that we're going through. We've just submitted the first of these applications, and the rest will be in by the end of the year. And ultimately, it means we'll be able to drill, but not until the very end of next year, December 2023. And so with that timeline that's quite extended, but with all the data and the excitement we have for the project, we wanted to do this bit of work to with full disclosure, put out there to the market why we're so excited by this asset.
And you're referencing, I'm just going back to the slide 6E, right? So
Yeah.
2.8 to 7.7 million ounces and 6E. Explain the 6E real quick. And it sounds like a naive question, but I don't think everybody is involved in PGE projects every day. I think most investors are involved in copper and gold projects, silver, obviously, and we know what
Yep.
AG and AU equivalent maybe stands for. But 6E and 4E, like what's included and how do you calculate it?
Sure. Like all of these things, it's important to understand, where these numbers come from and be able to therefore take a view on that. So 6E is essentially there's 6 key precious metals and platinum group elements. So the dominant ones here being palladium and platinum, along with here gold and rhodium. So those 4 would make up 4E: platinum, palladium, gold, and rhodium. And then with the addition of iridium and ruthenium, you get 2 additional PGEs in that what they call basket in these types of deposits, and they're all quoted in grams per ton. So it's quite simply adding up the gram per ton values of each of those PGEs. And how now under various different exchanges, you have rules around quoting equivalents. And we can't do that on JORC, quote an equivalent, unless we have good metallurgical information and so on, which we're not quite at that point yet. And understandably, it can be quite misleading. So what we've also done, if you look at our presentation, there's a slide which shows some pie charts, which shows what the basket value of these are. So when you look at the ratios of these different elements, you can come up with what is 1 gram 6E for that area. And we're looking here at around, on 2 of the reefs, around $1,900 per ounce. So essentially, that's not far off, gold, or even a little bit higher than gold. So it takes a bit of understanding where those numbers come from to assess it.
That's why I'm asking. Is like I don't often run into I don't look at too many PGE projects on a daily basis, right? So I think some of our investors and followers as well. Some clarification is needed sometimes as well.
Sure.
So you're going through the permitting process to get that drill permit. Is there anything you can do like in the meantime on the projects? I know you've flown some studies on the project. Anything you can do on the ground in the meantime?
Yeah, we've got teams out there now basically mapping and sampling the surface expressions of this so that we can verify all of the historical work. But what we've also been able to do, there's an amazing geological archive, and they keep historical core. So we've managed to dig out 30 of the historical drill holes and send those off for reassay to confirm the historical intercept. And they've come back verifying those. And in fact, most of our results on average are about 10 to 20% higher than the historical ones. But we've also been able to assay for these additional elements. So a lot of that historical work only assayed for platinum and palladium and maybe missed rhodium, or also importantly here, nickel and copper. So we're seeing quite important nickel copper credits. And if you look at the major deposits of this type, the main ones down on the Bushveld, and the most sort of exciting new development there is Ivanhoe's Flat Reef. There's a major contribution from nickel and copper as well. So it's a really nice suite of elements that are really capturing the themes at the moment around electrification and combating climate change. So the platinum and palladium get used in catalytic converters to reduce emissions, and the loading requirements the governments expect for those is only increasing. And then obviously nickel and copper are really applicable to electrification. And then going on from there, it's looking like platinum is going to be a key element in hydrogen fuel cells. So it's a great suite of sort of future-facing elements. And that resampling basically, it has shown to us that it looks to be essentially the highest grade PGE exploration target out there today. You can see from our exploration target, we've got grades ranging from 4 to just over 7 grams 6E. Now, most of the mines in production today are in the sort of 3 to 5 gram range. And we're seeing really, really significant grades, and also zones where we get up to more than 30 meters thickness at over 5 grams. So it's quite spectacular when you also consider that most of the other PGE opportunities that juniors have currently in the market are these lower grade sort of 1 to 2 gram opportunities that require being large tonnage, open pit projects. Now, the fact is there's not one of those in production today. They're all in the ground. And so this tells you a lot of things. First of all, global smelting capacity is built next to these high-grade mines down on the Bushveld or in the US. So what we hope is that our product will fit those nicely. We're also situated in Finland. So whereas 40% of the world's palladium comes from South Africa and from Russia and South Africa producing essentially the rest, having many issues in terms of where you could source your PGEs from. Finland's a great spot. And then just finally, that high grade nature for us is really important because it means we can minimize our environmental footprint. So we're looking at this as a really high tech underground mine. So this should make permitting easier. It should be something that is also recognized by potential financiers in the future or potential acquirers, because it's becoming more and more of a factor. And I think the days of permitting enormous open pits are going to become more and more difficult in a lot of areas. So that's why we like this. And it just so happens to be 10 to 15 kilometers away from one of Europe's largest operating chrome mines by a major industrial port. So it's got all of these attributes that we really like about it.
You mentioned the green revolution indirectly as well, and I'm trying to figure out like how the project fits in and what kind of conversations have you been having already. I know you're ways away from production, so let's not get too far ahead. But I'm really curious, like, are the ESG funds calling yet to sort of invest? Like, because everybody wants to say we're a green fund and we want to invest in green mining projects, but I never hear from them. So I'm curious what the conversations are like on your end.
Well, I think what we are hearing is it's more and more a consideration, and I think it's getting to the point where you may even be able to get local government approvals for a mine, but you won't get the financing because a lot of these financial institutions will have much higher thresholds in terms of ESG. So that is the way things are going, and that's what we're focused on. And one of the ways we're doing that, I mean, even from day one, before we've got a rig here, we've got a full-time head of sustainability who is probably Finland's preeminent mining sustainability expert. She worked with the likes of Agnico Eagle on their Kittilä mine, with Anglo American on Sakatti, etc. So what we're doing is putting a lot of emphasis into that, which should help smooth our permitting process and then make it a more attractive project in the long term.
Do you see any bottlenecks in the permitting process? Or any like anything that gives you sleepless nights or anything that leaves you up pondering?
Well, we've just completed all of the field surveys for our work, and they're really at face value look very positive. We don't see much in the way of critical habitats or species that are going to become an issue, and we've even spent time recently with the environmental authorities who approve these things on the ground, and we're feeling positive about the prospects of getting permitted. And as I say, every other project in a similar scenario who's ahead of us in Finland have been successful. So there's a good precedent there. There is one frustrating potential risk is that once it gets approved by the Ministry of Mines and Environment next year, there is an appeals process. So you can have instances where environmentalists, NGOs may put appeals in. Again, when this has happened, in every case, it's been overturned and ruled in favor of the company because we've demonstrated clearly through good work and environmental surveys why we should be able to operate there. But it can just frustrate the timeline a bit, which I guess brings me on to why we're looking at other things and still talking about M&A.
Yeah, that's we still need to squeeze that in somehow. But let's talk about that. And because obviously news flow seems to be slower until you start drilling, obviously, in Scandinavia, until you get that drill permit. So M&A is going to fill that void. And how much time and attention are you going to spend on M&A?
Exactly. So what we've done is we've looked at our finances. We've got 27 million in the bank. We look to sell the Wailingo mine, and this will add to that. So we have ring-fenced funding for Penikat to take it through the next 3 years through to maiden resource and a scoping study, and the metallurgy and everything that needs to be done on that. So we're confident that long term that's going to underpin the value in this company. But exploration has its risks and its unknowns, and also while we wait for those drill permits to come through, we shouldn't sit idle. We've got a first-class team and I think a great market for us to go hunting for other opportunities. So we're continuing to look predominantly in the same space. So our focus now is actually nickel and copper assets. These often come associated with PGEs or perhaps some gold, but nickel copper assets are our focus, with a primary focus around Scandinavia, although we are also looking a little further afield to other secure jurisdictions such as Canada and so on. And the aim being that I believe there's an opportunity with our cash balance and our capacity as a team to have 2 to 3 really high quality assets that we can be moving forwards in parallel. And that is exploration, as many will know, has its inherent risks, whether they're technical, permitting, jurisdictional, etc. And so I think hedging our bets by looking to bring in another asset or two is the right way to go. We're doing it without impacting the opportunity on our existing good assets. But long term, I think that creates the potential for huge value. One way or another, one of them should at least backstop the value in the company, or we may find ourselves with 2 or 3 really good quality assets that all drive value. But I will say, because we have Penikat that is looking so good and we are in a comfortable cash position, we're not rushing to do it. So the assets need to look exceptional for us to get interested.
I think the current market should offer you a couple decent opportunities in the near future, I think. So I'm sure a lot of companies will struggle to finance over the next 3 to 4 months.
Exactly. So we're well positioned there, and we're having a lot of conversations along those lines. And but as I say, we say no to a lot of things. You know, we're not in the scenario where we're promoting a project to get finance to pay our salaries for the next year. We're genuinely interested in finding good quality ore bodies that can make it as mines.
Fantastic. No, Fabian, fantastic conversation. It ran a little longer than I had planned, but it was a great conversation, great back and forth. Thanks for humoring and entertaining my questions, as naive as some of them probably were. And all the best. I'm really looking forward to you guys getting the drill permit, and maybe we end up on a note like what the next news items might be.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're just about to announce some geophysics and plans for drilling on our Norwegian project, which we didn't talk much about. There's the sale of Wailingo, which should be closing very soon. And then really from then on in, it's going to be looking at what's the next project coming into the portfolio.
Fantastic. Fabian, thank you so much for joining us. It was a great conversation. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks very much. Bye.
Fantastic. Everybody else, thank you so much for tuning in. This was SF Live. We were joined by Fabian Baker. He's the managing director over at Kingsrose Mining, and they get $27 million in cash. They're going to add more cash through the sale of an asset, and are looking for new assets, but they also have a really interesting project in Finland, another one in Norway that they're about to drill very soon as well. What do you think of the company? Leave it in the comments. Are you an investor? Are you going to be an investor? Really curious? And please don't forget to hit that subscribe and smash that like button. Really appreciate it. And we'll be back with lots more content soon. Thank you so much.